Selectman LeMay is going to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, welcome, everybody. This is the deliberative session. I want to introduce who's up here. On my left, which would be your right, we have Selectman LeMay. He's vice chairman of the board. The chairman of the board isn't here because he apparently got married or something. That's what I was told. And then we have Richard Manzo, Selectman Manzo, and Selectman Douglas, Joshua Douglas, and Selectman James Jim Craig, and then Town Administrator Derek Horn, and Assistant Town Administrator Danielle Barassa. That's on that side. On this side, we have me, and I'm Rod Stark, and this is Barbara Griffin. She's the Assistant Town Moderator. Don't give her any lip. Okay, so the department heads who are probably here in attendance, if you would let us know if you are. You got Police Chief Eric Serino. Yeah, good to see you. Fire Chief Benjamin Selleck. Good, thank you. Public Works Director Adam Jacob. And then we got Parks and Rec Director Rick Wilhelmy. I don't see him. Okay, well, and then the Library Director Diane Hathaway. Present. Thank you all. Now, these are the Budget Committee members who may be in attendance. Elizabeth DeBrill, Chair. Samantha Kearns, Vice Chair. Joseph Alexander Jr., Israel Carey, Allison Cesare, Peter Gregorkias, pardon me, Rich Jewell, Brian Mazur, James Piercy, Doug Pounds, Laura Stevens, Olivia Welch Erdahl. And then also, Mark Renaud is a rep of the Goffstown Village Water Precinct to the Budget Committee. Jared Talbot is a school board rep. The alternate school board rep is Jack Carbonneau. And excuse me, the select board rep is Richard Manzo. Now, the state senator for District 16, which covers Goffstown, Hooksett, Candia, and Raymond, is Keith Murphy. I don't know if he's here. And then our state reps, District 29, which is the town, Joe Alexander, Henry Glasson, Sherry Reinfurt. And District 44, which covers Goffstown and Ware, is Ross Berry and Lisa Mazur. Thank you all. Now this is This is the moderator's opening statement on the rules of procedure. This has been worked out over time. Since 1996, Goffstown has operated under the standardized official ballot referendum system, form of town meeting, commonly referred to as SB2. The most important thing for you to know is that we will not be voting to pass or defeat any warrant article tonight. What we do tonight is we discuss and deliberate on the warrant articles and to how they will appear on the official town ballot in March. All warrant articles will be on the town's official ballot for voting in March, which is the second session of this town meeting. There are printed rules of procedures available for participants in the handout, which was available out there. I'd like to take a few minutes to highlight a few of the rules for tonight's meeting. Number one, we are guests of the high school today. Smoking and the use of tobacco products are prohibited while on school grounds, anywhere. All speakers must use microphones, show their voting card, and state their name and address for the scribe. Please state your name and address every time you come to the microphone. Comments and questions must be germane to the warrant article being discussed. All comments and questions must be addressed through me, the moderator. Nobody is compelled to answer your question. I will not tolerate derogatory comments to be made about any speaker or person in this hall, so please be civil. The printed rules are in tonight's handout. These rules give direction on how to file an amendment to an article and request for secret ballot. Forms are available for these purposes, and there are people here who can assist you in obtaining and filling out those forms if you choose to do so. So anyway, please be respectful of others. If you have a question, please ask. Now, I would entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the warrant.
So moved.
Got a motion
Fred Platt.
from Fred Platt to dispense with the reading of the warrant. Is there a second? Anybody want to discuss the motion? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Good. The motion passes. Oh, now, we're just going to start with Article 9, because all the previous ones have to do with planning board and zoning. We don't get involved in that at this meeting. So, Article 9 is the town's operating budget, and for this I recognize Selectman Manzo.
I move Article 9 to the floor, Mr. Moderator.
Second.
Okay? It's been moved to the floor and seconded. Selectman Manzo, do you wish to discuss this?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And thank you all for being here tonight. The explanation for the proposed town budget begins on page 5 of the handout. The article this year, Article 9, only consists of the town's general fund. The sewer fund is broken out into its own separate article this year. The general fund is the primary operating fund for the town, covering the expenses for town hall, police, fire, public works, parks and recreation, and the library. This fund is mainly supported by property taxes, local fees and revenues, and shared revenue from the state of New Hampshire. Town voters in Goffstown established the Budget Committee at town meeting in 1960. The proposed budget for discussion tonight is considered to be proposed by the Budget Committee with input from the Select Board and the town department heads. This year, the Budget Committee is recommending an operating budget of $27,519,425. The proposed budget is an increase of $1,405,559 over the 2025 appropriation, and this constitutes a 5.4% increase. This amount does not include any other appropriation articles that will be discussed here this evening. So, to briefly touch upon how a budget comes to be, the Select Board generates the initial budget with input from our department heads. That budget then goes in front of the Budget Committee for effectively 3 months of intense scrutiny. The Budget Committee, their job is to balance the need for town services against the impact on property taxes. In the end, the Budget Committee cut just over $2 million from the Select Board's proposed budget. And to summarize the Budget Committee's proposed budget, most of the increases are due to cost increases needed to maintain the same level of town services. This budget also increases the town's capital budget, which I will touch on in a little bit. The cost drivers for this budget can be found on page 6 of your handout. It mostly touches on increase in software, hardware, and communications costs, increases in health and safety equipment for our first responders, things like bullet-resistant vests, fire turnouts, self-contained breathing devices. And the town also has significant increases in costs for solid waste disposal. Newly this year, the state has implemented a mandatory landfill charge of $3.5 per ton, which the town will receive back from the state as an offsetting revenue. This budget includes step increases for non-union employees, and there is no matrix adjustment for non-union employees this year. The budget also includes an increase in the town's capital budget. There are 2 DPW vehicles removed from last year's budget that are present in this budget. DPW F550 dump truck and a DPW solid waste roll-off trailer. In 2025, the library also completed a drainage project to correct long-standing flooding issues. If you've been there, we all call it Lake Library. There are funds to pave the library parking lot to complete that project in the next year. This budget maintains the practice of purchasing 3 police cruisers, and there's an increased cost to cruisers that we've been seeing across the board. The estimated tax rate impact of the Budget Committee's proposed operating budget is 46 cents on every $1,000 of assessed value. And the estimated increase to the 2026 municipal portion of the tax bill for a median single-family residence is $191.64. The default budget, the 2026 default budget is more or less the 2025 adopted budget. There's some calculations that go into that. We reduce or increase it based on debt service that might be new or have fallen off due to a bond expiring. Contracts previously passed by voters at town meeting, other obligations incurred or mandated by law, and reduced by one-time expenditures from last year. The default budget includes contractual wage increases for 3 union CBAs approved by voters at the last town meeting, representing the patrol officers, dispatchers, and firefighters. It includes no wage increases for the town's non-union employees, which make up roughly half of our workforce, which is approximately 80 full-time equivalent positions. The default budget includes funded positions from the approved 2025 budget, and there is a reduction in 1 vacant full-time position at Town Hall in both the default and the proposed budget. Both the Select Board and the Budget Committee recommend approval of the town's operating budget.
All right, I will open up the floor for discussion on Article 9.
Hi, everyone. My name is Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street, Goffstown. It's going to be a lot of the same thing I said yesterday. I wasn't able to attend the public hearing because of an emergency, but I am the vice chair of the Budget Committee. If I had been able to attend the public hearing, I would have voted in favor of this particular article. So, thanks.
This is low tonight. Sierra Hubbard, 49 Holly Street. I was wondering, so the 5 members of the Budget Committee voted against. I didn't know if any of those members were here and could offer their 2 cents on why they voted against it. And then, oh yeah, sorry. So it says under the highlighted cost drivers, it talks about the cost increases for goods and services to maintain the same level of town services. That is not included in the default budget. And so, does that mean if the default passes, like there are services that we would lose out in town? Is there any idea what that would look like? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Brian Mazer, 39 Shirley Park Road. And to answer that direct question, I am part of the Budget Committee, and for those 5, if I could speak for them, it was the what was presented to the town or to the voters is at 5.4%, and I'm on, excuse me, I'm on record to say that I want it to be around 3% or thereabouts for inflation or consumer price index. So since we couldn't get it down in our discussions, deliberations, that's why the 5 of us voted not to recommend the budget. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Peter Grigorakakis, 112 Gorham Pond Road. I just have a question about the tipping fee. Could you confirm what we're saying here? The tipping fee is something that we have to pay. Is there any statutory guarantee that we'll receive all the revenue when it's time to pay?
I will take those questions and the answer they were posed. As to what would happen if we were in a default budget situation, those priorities would need to be weighed by the select board that's seated after the March election. I can't tell you exactly what those priorities would be, but you are correct in saying that there are some increases that we are seeing that are not present in the default budget. And Peter, to your question, we do have a statutory guarantee that those funds will come back to us.
Anyone else?
Sorry, what was the follow-up question?
Sure.
So I should also acknowledge I am a member of the Budget Committee as well. And I think we did a lot of work on this budget this year. It was a very challenging year for us. We had to go back and forth. I would recommend to anyone, if you're a nerd and want to watch a lot of video, you'll see us talking about this back and forth over and over again. I will admit I did personally go through again after we made initial cuts and ask our department heads to go through line by line, looking at every single line that I found where we might have had under expenditure potentially. Every single one, and question it. We all had an opportunity to question that. I would like to say to this governing body, because we are the governing body tonight, okay, we need to take that responsibility to the polls, just like we would at a wedding. Speak now or forever hold your peace. If there is something in this operating budget that you truly believe we can responsibly reduce the tax burden of, please speak up tonight. This is what this opportunity is for, okay? I did not personally see anything, but I have told other members of Budget Committee who wanted the number to be lower, please bring me the amounts that you want to reduce and why, so that we can have a real discussion. What we should know is that there are people who want a higher number to go to the polls so that it looks bad and we get a default. We should know that at this governing body. So those of us who are here, who are acting in good faith, speak now, please.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on this article? Yes.
Sorry, I just have one more question. Sierra Hubbard, 49 Holly Street. On the tipping fee, we have that statutory guarantee. Is it the same kind of statutory guarantee that exists for a lot of other things that don't make it back to the towns? Just wondering how we're feeling about that. Thank you.
To answer that question directly and frankly, I hope not. I hope that when we are guaranteed those funds back, that we actually see them. I believe, a good example of funds that don't actually end up reaching towns would be, for example, special education funding. I would really hope that this is not one such situation, but we have a guarantee, and that's what we're operating under.
Anyone else? Well,
Mr. Moderator, I'll move to restrict reconsideration of Article 9.
Second.
moved and seconded to restrict reconsideration of Article 9. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Okay, Article 10. Article 10 is the operating budget for the Sewer Enterprise Fund. And for this, I recognize Selectman Craig.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jim Craig. I'm one of the selectmen, and I'm here to talk about the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Now, the explanation for the Sewer Enterprise Fund, if you want to follow along, is on page 7 of the handout. The Sewer Enterprise Fund is its own article again this year. Like the town's operating budget, the Sewer Enterprise Fund has both a proposed budget and a default budget. The Sewer Fund operates as an enterprise fund, completely supported by fees paid by customers connected to the sewer system. So this is not collected through taxes, it's user fees. The Sewer Enterprise Fund has no tax impact. There are 2,175 sewer accounts billed twice a year. The department is managed by 3 elected commissioners who serve staggered 3-year terms. Daily operations are overseen by 3 full-time non-union employees. There is an increase in costs at the Manchester Treatment Facility, where Goffstown sends its sewerage. However, fees and sewer reserve funds were able to absorb the increases without increases to user or connection fees. The sewer department continues to be focused on capital improvements of the town's sewer system. Each year, the sewer department videotapes portions of the system to plan reconstruction in a cost-efficient manner. Both the sewer commissioners and the budget committee recommended approval of the sewer budget. Thank you.
Article 10 now is open for discussion. Anyone wish to be heard on this article? Yes.
Karen Manasky, 22 Rochambeau Street. My question is that, and hopefully this, I'm making sense, if not, you can correct me. 2,000 plus sewer accounts will pay, if this article is passed, will pay for the $2.2 plus million article. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so what is the impact then on those homes? What's the tax impact on those homes?
There's no tax impact on this. It's all sewer users. Sewer users pay for this budget.
Okay,
They get-
so so I'm one of those sewer users. What's the impact on for my home?
So there's, I believe the fee for a single-family residential is $245 twice a year. And there's, as I understand it, no proposed fee increases in 2026.
So how do we get to $2.2 plus million if there's no increase?
They're using some of their reserve funds to pay for increases. I think that's under bullet number 1 on the explanation on page, what page are we on? Page 7.
Okay, so there literally is no cost. They will be
No.
able to raise they'll have the $2.2 plus million for the sewer.
Sewer users will receive a bill twice a year like they did in 2025.
There's no other cost.
There's no,
With no added cost. Okay.
with no increase, correct, to the bill.
And that'll take care of this whole, thank you.
Yes.
Does anyone else have a question or comment? All right, then,
Move to reconsideration of Article 10.
Second.
okay, it's been moved by and seconded to restrict reconsideration of Article 10. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Now, before we go to the next article, I would like to make recognition of Robin Perry. She's not sitting up here. She's sitting in the front row, and she's been the interim town clerk since Kathy Ball resigned. And thank you, Robin. Article 11. This is the collective bargaining agreement between the town and the Department of Public Works Teamsters. For this, I recognize Selectman Douglas.
Thank you. I move Article 11 to the floor.
Seconded.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's an important event. So this article in particular is an explanation of the collective bargaining agreement for DPW and the Teamsters that you'll find on your handout on page 8. So please turn there if you'd like to look at it a little bit. So this is a 3-year contract that covers 24 positions at DPW. Typically, the laborers, truck drivers, heavy equipment operators, scale house operators, solid waste attendants, mechanics, assistants, solid waste truck drivers. So basically, everybody in town that is consistently touching your roads, your trash cans, and everything else you can think about. So going into the negotiations, the board wanted to maintain an equitable wage and benefits for these positions so we could focus on retention. The town targeted the 50th percentile when looking at these positions that were similar across other public works departments throughout southern New Hampshire and the New Hampshire DOT. So the result was that a 5% matrix adjustment in year 1 with no step increase. It was also necessary to adjust the matrix for the mechanic assistants as the town's prior wage matrix was well behind the market. There's no matrix adjustment in year 2, only steps. And in year 3, there is a 2.5% matrix adjustment plus steps. So The town also negotiated additional hourly differential for waymasters in the certification to provide flexibility for transfer station coverage. That was a 50 cent an hour differential. The increase for CDLA drivers to provide flexibility for coverage, that was an hour differential per hour from $1.50 to $2.50. So the CBA also included sick and family leave, discontinuation of sick bank language, and a reduction to the town's contribution to health savings accounts for members with high deductible plans. The estimated tax impact for 2026 is 2 cents per thousand. The estimated increase for 2026 municipal portion of the tax bill for the median single-family residence is $8.33. This article was unanimously recommended by the Select Board and the Budget Committee. So, thank you.
Would anybody like to be recognized on this article?
Bill Roberts, 23 Roberts Road. I just wonder if you could explain the figure at the bottom right for the increase in 2028. It's different than the one in the handout. And it's about $18,000 more. Maybe it's just a transposition of a 7 and a 9.
We've confirmed it is a typo.
Which one's right?
79,931.
79,931.
Yes.
Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street. Once again, I'm the vice chair of the Budget Committee. I couldn't attend the public hearing. If I had been there, I also would have voted to recommend this to the warrant and as well as the previous article as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Brian Mazer, 39 Shirley Park Road. My question is this, and I asked the school the same question last night about the CBA. Is there a way, since this is supplemental information, that we can get the impact for year two and year 3? Because we're just showing year 1. If someone signs up for this, I'm not advocating for or against it, but again, if someone actually is going to vote for this, they're committing financially for 3 years, not just 1 year. So I think it's a little misleading saying this is the impact. I think we really need to show as estimates year 2 and year 3 impact. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. While we would like to do that, unfortunately, it's hard to predict some of those variables because we may actually have staff that changes out. There could be a number of things that actually occur, like family additions. So those all do impact relative employments. There's a number of other things that also come into play, revenue that we may get additional from the state. So some of those may actually be different from year to year to be able to give that prediction.
Anyone else? All right. Well, is there a motion?
Motion to restrict Article 11?
Seconded. What?
Restrict reconsideration, sorry.
Thank you.
Seconded.
All right, is it seconded?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, all in favor of restricting reconsideration of Article 11, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. We'll go to Article 12. And this is to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate an additional $450,000 for Goffstown's road improvement program. This appropriation is in addition to Article 9. This sum to come from unassigned fund balance, no new amount to be raised by taxation, and a majority vote is required. So this is recommended by the Select Board 5 to 0 and recommended by the Budget Committee 9 to 3 to 1. Who wishes to address this?
I move Article 12 to the floor.
Second.
Okay, we'll open it up for discussion on Article 12.
The explanation for Article 12 begins on page 9 of your handout, and additionally, there is an explanation of unassigned fund balance on page 18 of the handout. This article asks the voters to use funds from the town's unassigned fund balance to add an additional $450,000 to the road plan budget in the operating budget. If approved, there would be a total of $1.6 million in reclamation plus $500,000 in resurfacing. Passage of this article would return road plan funding to 2020 to 2024 levels. Prior to 2010, the town funded the road plan at $2.5 million annually. And as you can see from the handout, the annual funding of the road plan was reduced by more than 50% in 2012. Beginning in 2016, the town incrementally increased funding to the road plan. And from 2020 to 2024, the road plan was funded at $2.1 million annually. Last year, the road plan, including both reclamation and resurfacing, were reduced to 1.6 million, just a hair over. The cost to resurface and reclaim public roads has greatly increased over the past 20 years, but in the last few years, highway construction has spiked. This has had a major impact on how much road work the town can do each year, as our purchasing power has pretty much decreased very majorly from 2008 to today, and it continues to decrease every single year. These cost increases, coupled with a reduction in road plan funding over time, lead to degradation of the town's roads. As you can see on the slide, the reduced road funding in the last 3 budget cycles have shifted the condition rating of our roads downward. This article is to be funded from the unassigned fund balance, and the article is recommended by both the Select Board and the Budget Committee.
Does anyone wish to be heard?
Brian Mazer, 39 Shirley Park Road. In my remarks, is more of a consideration for this governing body, the Select Board. I mentioned to the school board, it's kind of a 2-part consideration. One is that if you can have consistent language between governing bodies, because the school board uses no new amount to be raised from taxation, and this governing body uses by taxation. So maybe be consistent. That's one consideration. More appropriately, I think the better consideration would be this, for you guys can consider. Instead of using that language, use this appropriation uses existing funds from prior tax collections or unspent budget balances. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street. As a member of the Budget Committee, I also would have voted to recommend this, and I think it's important to talk about why. This past summer, I got to go walk around some streets in Bernardville with some folks who live there, and the state of those roads were not good. Definitely on the failed, poor side of things. I know that as a member of the Budget Committee last year, I voted in favor of cutting the road plan, right? And that is a choice a mistake that I made that I have to live with, right? Adequately funding our roads protects all of us. It protects all of your neighbors, right? It helps your property values. It helps your car. It helps to protect your car. Which, nobody wants to have all of a sudden you got a pop tire, right? And you have to deal with that. And that is such a pain. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Thanks.
Don't hurt yourself.
Sierra Hubbard, 49 Holly Street. I appreciate that note, and I just want to say, as someone who lives in Bernardville, and we bought our house in mid-2023, and the road that we were on was redone as we bought the house, and it made such a huge difference in terms of the moisture on our property and the water and runoff on our property. So huge thank you for that. Strongly in favor of it because it makes such a difference, not just property values, but like the structural integrity of your home. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 12.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 12? It's been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Article 13. Article 13 seeks to appropriate $350,000 to deposit into the Fire Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund from unassigned fund balance. And for this, I recognize Vice Chairman LeMay.
Thank you, sir. I move Article 13 to the floor.
Seconded.
We have had the good fortune of having some of the best fire apparatus in the town of Goffstown. Why? Because the people that work for the town on the fire side care for what we have. And if you're going to have the best fire apparatus, like everything else, you're going to pay a pretty decent price for it. So the explanation, if you're looking for it, starts on page 11 of your handout, and there is also an explanation of the fund balance in the handout. The Fire Department Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund was established back in 2008 to help defray the single-year impact of the replacement and cost of modern fire apparatus. This capital reserve fund helps to spend or spread that cost over multiple years to avoid spikes in taxes. At times, I'm going to deviate from this a little bit, at times when we would buy fire apparatus, we would have very large spikes in our taxes, and it was an up and down roller coaster, and we try to avoid that as we do still today. So we have done the 20-year matrix for the fire apparatus, so we know what piece is coming up and what's going on. The Goffstown Fire Department maintains a 20-year matrix, as I said, and it replaces fire apparatus. This matrix is updated annually based on the condition of the apparatus. The 20-year matrix is presented to the Capital Improvement Program Committee for review. The Fire Department and the CIP Committee use this 20-year matrix to recommend an annual deposit into the Capital Reserve Fund. By setting some money away each year, the town can maintain these critical fire apparatus and avoid spikes in property taxes. This fund also helps the town avoid borrowing. The cost of the apparatus continue to increase and the build time is getting longer. We've got 3 new pieces of fire apparatus in the town of Goffstown. They're all what we call pumper trucks. These pieces of fire apparatus that we have just got were all ordered, and it took 3 years to get the apparatus built, put together, and sent to the town. For the first time in the history that I know of, we now have a fire truck, not in this town, but in another town, $1.2 million. And the $1.2 million would be pretty hard for us to deal with. So we take chunks of it every year, put it aside so that when and if we do get the $1.2 million bill, it doesn't hurt our pockets. We have the money there and it works for us. I can tell you in 2030, the tower ladder that we have currently in town is going to need to be replaced. I won't even be able to begin to tell you what that price is going to cost. But I can pretty much guarantee you it'll be over $1 million. Construction time for the apparatus, as I said, has increased 3 to 4 years between orders, and the community has to receive it. The fund can also be provided town leverage if we end up with a grant or we end up with a piece of fire apparatus that's, we know is for sale. We can dig into this 1 point something million we have, and we can offset that where it doesn't affect us. The town old ladder truck that we had, aerial ladder truck, was paid for by FEMA grants, and $1 million aerial truck, capital reserve fund all came together. This article was recommended by the select board and the budget committee.
Right. Open for discussion on Article 12.
Hi, I'm Samantha, 5 Washington Street. I also would have voted to recommend this. I just want to speak on capital reserve funds. Capital reserve funds are incredible things. They allow us to save a little bit at a time, right? I know we talk about that a lot. I also had a question. I know at previous budget committee meetings, we talked about that if we pay for a fire truck in full, we often get a discount. Do you know if that's still true?
That is correct.
So if instead of us bonding, like not contributing to this and bonding it out, we would pay more versus if we have it in full in cash, we might get a little discount.
There are times that we may or may not have the money. If we buy a fire truck this year, we spend the 1 point something million. If something comes up next year, we don't have that money. We have to come up with the money in part of the town budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Sierra Hubbard, 49 Holly Street. On your graphic there, it cuts off at 2031. Ours goes to 2032. And it looks like on the path we're on that are we going to have enough to get to that point? Like, are we depositing and we're projecting that it would be at this amount for the next several years? But am I reading that right, that that rate is not sufficient?
We should have enough. We're looking to up this next year. We haven't come up with a number yet, but so that we have enough money in the pot to pay for the piece of fire apparatus. It's 250 to 350, 350 to maybe 450. It's gonna steadily climb. It's out of our hand, it's out of our control. It's the people that build the fire apparatus.
Anyone else? All right.
Mr. Chairman, move to restrict reconsideration on Article 13.
Seconded.
All right, there's been a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 13. That motion has been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We'll go to 14. Article 14 seeks to establish a capital reserve fund for the Goffstown Public Library. For this, I recognize Selectman Manzo.
I move Article 14 to the floor.
Second.
The explanation for Article 14 is on page 12 of your handout, and as before, there's an explanation of fund balance on page 18. This article seeks to establish a Goffstown Public Library Capital Reserve Fund for building projects and for seeking matching grant funds. If approved, the agents to expend from this Capital Reserve Fund will be the Library Board of Trustees, and the Library Board of Trustees are, of course, elected by the voters of Goffstown. This article also asks voters to make an initial deposit of $50,000 in this fund using the town's unassigned fund balance with no new amount to be raised by taxation. This capital reserve fund really serves a dual purpose. On the one hand, the library has put together a list of various building projects for which that they know are on the horizon, and it really is similar to the fire apparatus fund in that it's a savings tool. The other purpose is that those funds could be tapped into to seek matching grants. any state agencies or nonprofits that have grants to offer, matching grants that is, really do look for community support, public support of the local voters, and that really does improve the chances of getting those grants. The Goffstown Public Library was dedicated on October 3rd, 1909, and entered in the National Register of Historic Places on December 7th, 1995. Something to note about the National Register of Historic Places: when a building is on the National Register of Historic Places, that kind of limits the contractors that can work on those buildings, so they're kind of harder to seek out. The community, this major community asset retains virtually all of its original architectural detailing, terrazzo floor displays, and 2 large marble tablets inscribed with gold leaf names of 381 Goffstown men who served in past wars. The Library Board of Trustees, as I mentioned, has a prioritized list of projects to preserve and restore these historically important elements that may be eligible for grant programs, as well as needed facility repairs and improvements. This article is recommended by both the Select Board and the Budget Committee.
Is there any discussion on this article? You're competing for the
Well,
microphone?
I think I'm going to say some of the same stuff that you are. Samantha, 5 Washington Street. As you all know, I wasn't able to attend the public hearing. I would have voted to recommend this as well. I also had the privilege of serving on the LCHIP committee last year with Elizabeth and Will, with some other members of the library trustees as well. Not having a capital reserve fund made the LCHIP process harder. Our library does an incredible job. And I know that $50,000 may seem like a lot, but they can stretch this. I promise you. This will help them so much with just applying for grants, with fundraising, with everything that they're attempting to do to make our library the best place that it can possibly be. Thank you.
Elizabeth DeBrule, 9 First Ave. So like Sam said, I served on that committee with her for LCHIP, and I'm just a general supporter of their library. Also, I'm a historian by profession, believe it or not. I'm an employed historian. I should probably preface that. But these kind of funds are really important in general. I support them. A lot of towns have way more CRF funds than we do, or capital reserve funds than we do, but we can use them very strategically, the ones we've had. The Parks and Rec has a similar fund, a revolving fund that they can use to fund these kind of projects. I've been on and off the budget committee for 15 years now, and I know that a lot of times these smaller projects in things that are not life safety issues tend to get cut when the budgets are tight, and the budgets are always tight. And having this kind of capital reserve fund really helps the library go out and look for grants or take care of small projects, smallish projects that will save that historic building. There's also a massive shortage of people working in historic building trades. If your kid is handy, this is a really good field to go into. When we were looking at for the LCHIP grant and for getting estimates on the work to be done, there was a 2 to 3 year waiting list for the qualified people. As Richard mentioned, that there's only a handful of people who do this kind of work in the state who would be able to work on this project. And it's very hard, if that money for the project is in the operating budget, to tie it over and commit it a couple years out. It's a mess. And having a capital reserve fund makes it so much easier. I must have said it half a dozen times when we were working on this grant. This would have been so much easier if we'd had a capital reserve fund. So I really hope people support this article. It's very important to saving what I think is probably the most historically significant building in town, and it really the centerpiece of the village. So I hope people join me in voting for this. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, Teresa Curtis, 43 Tipping Rock Road. I'm also the chair of the Library Board of Trustees. And I don't think I could have said it any better than what Elizabeth has said. I would encourage people, there's a QR code on the screen in front of you. We are beginning to prioritize those types of projects that need to be done around the library that have been either unfunded or just neglected. And in addition to restoring certain pieces like the historic tablets or the floors, we've got masonry, exterior masonry for the building that needs to be repointed. We have exterior painting. I don't know if any of you have ever looked, but you'll see that the trim around the building is peeling and needs to be redone. We have an HVAC system that was last put in when the building was renovated 30 years ago that is reaching end of life. And what we're trying to do with this capital reserve fund is to be able to, similar to the fire department, although we don't buy trucks, have that money in reserve so that we can fix those things when they need to be fixed, take care of those projects as they need to be done. And we very much appreciate the support that we got from the Board of Selectmen when we brought this proposal forward to them to ask them for their support. So thank you.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on this article?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 14.
Second.
There's a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 14. That has been seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We'll go to 15. Article 15 asks the voters appropriate funds for the purchase of a curbside solid waste packer. Selectman Douglas.
Thank you. I move Article 15 to the floor.
Second.
Thank you. So in your handout on page 13, you'll find an explanation of Article 15. This article does ask you, the voters, to appropriate $430,000 to purchase a curbside waste packer to replace a 2012 curbside packer truck. This originally was something that we had planned to do is something that would not impact the tax rate. However, we had to make a choice between the road and this packer. Originally, we started off with this coming out of the unassigned fund balance, but we made the choice to prioritize the road and then ask the town to consider putting in money for this. This is the third year in a row that the DPW and the Select Board have included this vehicle in replacement for the town budget. In 2024, the town had a default budget, and this purchase was deferred. In 2025, the Budget Committee chose to remove the vehicle to pull down the tax rate based upon the appropriations, and pulled it out of the capital portion of the operating budget. The town maintains two different frontline packers and two backup packers. So we talked about before about, the town and the DPW working. You probably have seen them out this year. These trucks run 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week. And when one's down, another one has to come back in to replace it. And the older that they get, the more that we're actually seeing them be impacted. And Adam and his team are constantly have to maintain these to pull them back and forth. So these are also pulling out about 1,000 to 1,200 barrels a day, and they collect over 16 million pounds of trash and recycling each year out of the town. It takes us 2 years, because there's a 2-year lead time from the time that we order for these types of vehicles before they show up. And the reason for that, much like what you heard about the fire truck, is that we have a lot of private equity entities that are basically buying up vehicle companies and extending out the prices and impacting towns like ours. So we have to be very cognizant about how we're buying these trucks and taking the time to get there. The estimated tax rate impact is 16 cents per thousand. The estimated increase to the 2026 municipal portion of the tax bill for median single household residents would be $66.66. This article was recommended by the Select Board and was not recommended by the Budget Committee. Thank you.
All right. Who wishes to discuss this article?
Hi, Shannon Carey, 16 Gorham Pond Road. So am I correct that the Packer truck would be a part of the replacement schedule we have for the DPW? Is that something that's on the schedule? Okay, so I'm just wondering, are there any plans to start a CRF for something of this nature so that instead of hitting taxpayers for $430,000, maybe it would only be $50,000 a year?
Thank you for the question. It is on the schedule. As you may or may not know, we do not have a ton of CRFs in the town, and we specifically do not have a CRF for this. Doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. It's probably something that we need to consider as we move forward.
Barbara Schultz, 11 Honeysuckle Lane. I just thought this is a good opportunity to point out to everyone here that we now have, just recently, I think in the fall, a composting, ability to compost at the town transfer station. Food waste is the heaviest part of our waste, and it's been estimated up to 25% of our waste, our trash, is food waste. So we can make an impact here without any cost to any of us if we just make an effort to bring our food, separate out your food waste and bring it to the transfer station. If you take 25% of 12.4 million pounds, that's a significant difference, and it would reduce the wear and tear on our trucks and on our roads and make the trucks last longer. So compost.
Good point.
Hi, I'm Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street. You know, for this particular article, I would have voted not to recommend it as well, just because of the tax impact. But this would be one of those difficult situations where, in the ballot box, I would probably vote in favor of it because I know how incredibly important it is for our town departments to have the vehicles that they need. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Tim Searles, 311 Terrell Hill Road. I was just wondering, this article, is this going to be a one-time? This is going to be a one-time tax revenue in our taxes, right? So it's not going to come back the following year.
That is correct. We intentionally did not include it into the default budget as part of the article.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Jessica Putin, Lesnick Road. I just want to echo Shannon's statement about CRF. I think it's very important because we keep seeing this, and if you understand replacement schedules, which that's my job, and when you have high engine miles on a truck, we're spending so much money in replacements and downtime, and this is super important, but I think we shouldn't be using surplus funds. It should be in our budget, and it should be a capital fund. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Yes.
Laura Stevens, 33 Orchard Hill Road. I am on the Budget Committee, and just to echo Shannon and Jessica, I know that I won't speak for them, but there were several of us on the Budget Committee who were very in favor of CRFs in any way to keep the cost each year smaller than the one time. I am in favor of this as it stands because I think it's important, but I would much rather see more of the small CRFs that we can fund regularly as well.
Brian Mesa, 39 Shirley Park Road. And actually, I'm going to get a question from my gentleman here. What is the question pertaining?
So down in Idle.
And what's your name and address?
Jonathan Johnson. I'm at 102 Worthy Hill Road, Goffstown, New Hampshire. I just wasn't on the voter roll. I was told I had to sit in the non-resident section. I just had a question about the trucks. We have 4, correct? 4 of these trucks? Okay. And I understand 2012, that's not brand new, but there's no other information about the trucks, their condition, their like down and idle time, this rotation, the rotation that we have of the vehicles. What's the expected longevity of these vehicles? Like, I understand we want new and usable vehicles, but like, what's the life expectancy on these vehicles? Other towns, other information? I'd be more comfortable with more transparency about why we need a new truck now. And so that's my concern.
All right. Thank you, guys.
That's great feedback. We definitely can do that before the March vote and provide some of that.
Sierra Hubbard, 49 Holly Street. Also, I was wondering why it wasn't a capital reserve fund, and obviously it's come up a lot. So can anyone speak to, like, are there downsides to having one that, like, we're not aware of? Like, again, if it's come up multiple years, can anyone speak to why that hasn't already been an idea or been done?
This will probably come up later, too, so I'll get into it now. Probably is a good thing. So we as a town have not typically done a lot around saving when it comes in putting things into capital reserve funds. We also do not have as many capital reserve funds as many other surrounding towns as well. That requires us to put some time and effort in, not just thinking about a single year budgeting process, but really starting to think about, thank you, thinking about overall like strategy of 2 to 3 years. And it also does require us to do things like pulling money out of the unassigned fund balance and putting it in there, or planning it as part of the budget and putting it in place. So there's a couple strategies about doing that. We haven't just created a lot of CRFs. This year we created a new one for the library, and we probably should think about creating ones for other places in the town as well. They typically have specific spots where they have to go as well, so specific use cases. And that gets voted on by the governing body to create some of those articles as well.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Dan McInnes, 15 Pine Ridge. It's a lot shorter than I am. I don't want to go down the path of trust me, bro, but I work in the waste and recycling industry. This is what I do all day, every day. That's why, despite my age, I look so old. And the 1,000 to 1,200 barrels a day is actually a very impressive number. Adam, good job. Might hire some of these people if you don't want them. And the gentleman who asked why they need to be replaced, even though it doesn't feel too old at that age, but the type of trucks we use in this town, which are ASLs, automated side loaders, you'll see them come out, grab the can, flip it back in, put it back down. There are a significant number of moving parts with those vehicles. And if you're thinking of the trash trucks that you had when you were kids, and they would just chuck it in the back, those things last 25 years and they're great. The new ones today can break 6 months into their life. So they have much more upkeep involved with them. They are more complicated than the older rear loaders. They're much safer, mind you. But this all strikes me as terribly reasonable. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you, Reed.
Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street. I just wanted to speak to the fact that I had brought this up, why we don't have a CRF fund at a budget committee meeting. One of the reasons that has always been given to me is that we would deposit a certain amount of money, we would immediately take that back out to purchase a Packard truck. But the other reason, which is probably why sometimes towns are or governing bodies are maybe a little bit more opposed, is they can sometimes be incredibly limiting. The Fire Department Capital Reserve Fund, for example, is only for fire apparatus. The Fire Department Capital Reserve Fund cannot be used to buy the fire chief's command vehicle, for example, right? Like the cars. It can only be used for like the towers and the tankers. It can't be, so that that's one of the reasons I would say that we haven't had capital reserve funds in the past. Thanks.
Hi, Kirsty Hazel Baker, 23 Timeway. I did a lot of research on unassigned fund balances before I came here, but I did not look at capital reserve funds. Can somebody tell me how they are funded? If we were to start adding them for different items, how would we fund them? Thank you.
Thank you. So it's one of two ways. It's either through the unassigned fund balance or through taxation. In both cases, those CRFs have to be set up through a warrant article, much like what we're doing this year for the library.
Hi, Olivia Welcher at all, 70 Plummer Street. I'm also a member on the Budget Committee. I did want to remind people that are asking why we need this truck this year, that it was deferred in 24 and 25. So we are seeing multiple larger purchases like vehicles showing up year after year on the budget and in warrant articles trying to catch up from a constant deferment. I would also like to remind people that these vehicles are starting and stopping the entire time they're moving, and that puts a massive amount of wear on them. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Israel Carey, 16 Gorham Pond Road. One question I have is in 2023, we made a transfer from the CIP from Public Works Heavy Equipment for $390,000. How come that wasn't used to buy a new Packer truck 3 years ago?
Sorry, just getting caught up because I wasn't here for that. So my understanding is it was put into road reclamation as a priority for that.
Right. Anyone else?
Jonathan Johnson, 102 Worley Hill. I'm not saying we don't need a truck. What I am saying is I'd like to see data points and justification, not just that it's a certain year old. I appreciate the gentleman who understands the business. I don't, I'm not claiming to. As a taxpayer, we'd like to see better justification. This doesn't show me any of that. There is no data on that. So I appreciate by March, I'd love to see that. If it's there, I'm 100% for new trucks. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 15.
Second.
All right, there's a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 15. It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Article 16. Article 16 asks the voters to appropriate funds for monthly stipends for select board members. I recognize Vice Chairman Lemay.
Thank you, sir. Hot topic. We've had a lot of debate on this one, and we'll see what happens. The explanation on Article 16 is on page 13 of your handout. Article 16 asks the voters to appropriate funds for select board stipends. The appropriation amounts include stipends plus required FICA, and Medicare. In addition to select board meetings, members serve on the town boards, committees, review payroll and all vendors' payment weekly, participate in CBA negotiations, work at town, state elections, and other duties as mandated by the state law. In researching this article, I know it may upset some of you, I said it, say it again. Selectmen stipends were in the operating budget since 1998. So this is not something new that we have started. Selectmen salaries equal $17,568. The oldest data electronically. Stipend not include FICA or Medicare. The select board members, in comparison, New Hampshire towns with select boards and town meeting average $3,372 per member. If approved by select board, if approved by voters, funds and stipends could not be used for any other purpose. Any individual board members refusing to the stipend would result in underspend, which would lapse the fund's balance at the end of the year. The estimated tax impact on the 2026 in the budget is 1 cent. The estimated increase for the 2026 municipal portion of this tax bill for a median single family valued at $416,000 is $4.17. This article was recommended by the select board. The budget recommended, voted, not recommended this article.
Anyone want to be heard on this article? I'm going to ask people who, when you come to speak now, please display your voter card. Thank you.
Brian Mazer, 39 Shirley Park Road. And my first comment, respectfully, if this was historically been in place since 1998, that's not justification to get a stipend. It was never brought forth to the voters to vote on it, so I just want to mention that. And I guess I want to express my sincere disappointment, not what you think, but when I'm reading this article and I see the entire select board make a 5-0-0 recommendation for something that they're going to be a direct recipient of financially from our tax dollars, I have a hard time with that. What I should see, or what we should see 005, all abstentions, because again, they're a direct recipient of these monies. So, thank you.
Everybody's so much taller than me.
Thank you.
Shannon Carey, 16 Gorham Pond Road. So a couple things. One, while I'll be voting no on this, I do have to say I appreciate that they're putting it forth. I won't go into the whole story, but I've gone back and forth numerous times this year with our town administrator, Derek Horn. He's been very patient with me and really great at getting the information. But as a voter, I voted on a budget last year that zeroed out this line. And I appreciate that the two new select board members, they campaigned saying, we're not taking the stipend. And that, to my knowledge, up to the last meeting I saw, you have not taken a stipend, and I appreciate that you were true to your word. I believe you guys work really hard. I know it's not just going to a meeting every couple of Mondays, but at the same time, our zoning board works really hard. When I had to come up before the zoning board, almost every member of the committee took time out of their day, their schedule, and used their own gas to drive to my property to see what was up for discussion. The budget committee, my husband's on the budget committee. I don't really see him a whole lot from about August until after March elections. So they don't get paid, and they don't vote to give themselves a stipend either. They can't put forth a warrant article saying, man, we work hard, we deserve this. So I appreciate this coming up, because if I'm understanding your Derek, semi-discussion, this puts it to bed. It's done. If this is voted down, there is no more gray area to operate in. 0 is 0, and that's the end of it, correct?
No means no.
No means no. Okay. So while I don't agree with this and you're getting a no from me, I appreciate that this was put forward so we at least as voters can, our no finally means no, apparently.
I see your card there.
Oh, right there. Hi, everybody. I'm Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street. I just wanted to share that as a member of the Budget Committee, I also would have voted to not recommend this article for a lot of the reasons that have already been said and that I'm sure will be said. I do appreciate all of the work that the select board does. Thank you guys so much. Thanks.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Liz Dolan, 356 Worthley Hill Road. I'm a yes. I have been trying to get myself to go to these meetings for years, and it's just so hard to do at night. These people give so much of their time, and like you said, time that is not even at the meetings. These are dedicated people, and they deserve to have some kind of monetary reward for that. So does the Budget Committee. And you know what? From my experience coming to these meetings, I think anybody can raise a warrant article and put it up there for the voters. So yes, they can put something up there, but we need to make sure that everybody can participate. And one of the things that people need in order to participate is sometimes financial support. Some people have to get a babysitter to do this stuff. Babysitters cost a lot of money. We need young people's voices to be heard. I think I am just disgusted by the selfishness of people.
Leonard Stewart, Riverledge Drive, Goffstown. Just to give a sense of proportion to what we're talking about here, what is the monthly stipend for the selectmen? What's the dollar amount?
$457. How much? $457. Per year? No, per month. Per month.
I would only say, I think, knowing the amount of time that's put in, and by the way, I appreciate Ms. Carey's kind remarks. I've been a member of the ZBA here since 2008, and one of the things that's inherent in what we do is going out and looking at what we're trying to decide on. But one of the big drawbacks in a lot of people stepping up for town positions is taking time off from work. I know that all of the board members, in addition to 2 meetings a month, they're on this board, that board, delegate. There's a lot more time involvement in it. It seems fair to me that people who are putting in, it's essentially a second job, that some small stipend, and God knows $450 a month doesn't go far these days, it is worth it. I just, I think it's a nickel and dime kind of thing, and I just, I do not agree. I believe I support it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Melanie Renfrew Hebert, 23 College Road. My card.
Thank you.
I just wanted to come up and kind of echo what a few other people had said. I do believe that the stipend really will help individuals who may have been trying to make a choice on whether or not to run for office. That it could be prohibitive. It could be a lot of time and effort. It could be costly for them and their household. And I think it would really separate out people who could be valuable, voices in the community at a higher level if they had access and the resources to be able to participate as fully. I know that many of our wonderful select board folks spend a lot of their time out in the community, spend a lot of their time following up on issues that have been brought to them, probably much more than $400 a month would be to any of them if they didn't do it. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. I would like to see more people in our community also be able to access at least some sort of small compensation to be able to be a voice in the government process here in Goffstown. Thank you.
Jessica Putin, Lesnick Road. So when we run for office in towns because we care about our community and we want to create the lowest tax burden for the best amount of services, and I think as a civil servant, you're not looking for money because we're trying to take care of our taxpayers and our services first. And this isn't taking care of the taxpayers. That's my vision. And also, families are stretched thin. People are stressed out about being taxed out of their homes, and you want to call it nickel and diming. Those nickel and dimes go to families, hardworking families, teachers whose CBA is up. Give it to the teachers. What are we doing? So no, I don't agree with it. Thank you.
Ginny McKinnon, 25 Meadowlark Lane. I believe the selectmen deserve a stipend. I know that all of our boards in town work very hard, very long hours, need babysitters, need to drive to meetings, and spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, miss birthday parties, miss family functions because of their meetings all of the time. And the stipends are not that much. And I know at this point, some of our boards, people are leaving the boards because they can't afford babysitters. People are thinking about the town and how we're going to keep our town, the quality town that it is. We have to think about the people that we're going to have on our boards, and not just people who just come in to be a low tax person. And I really think that they deserve a little bit. A lot of you sit at home, don't do your work, don't keep up with the information that's in town. And these people are, pardon me? There's a lot of work, and there's a lot of work that people do to get information out to you. And I think a little respect for those people by giving them a tiny little bit of money is respectful.
I have a point of order.
Yeah.
That's a priority motion.
What?
I have a point of order. According to the moderator's rules of procedure that you gave us tonight.
Brian, let me
I'm
see
sorry,
your card and go to the mic, please. Give us your name.
Apologies. Brian Templeton, 176 Kennedy Hill Road. So according to these rules, and this is only my third deliberative, so I'm still learning. Okay? So I read the whole thing tonight. 2.3, participants must address questions or comments to the moderator, not individual officials, committee members, or audience members. And there seems to be a trend tonight of this audience member. Everyone's turning and speaking this way. So I'm just wondering if this rule is going to be enforced for the rest of this deliberative.
All right. That's a good point, Brian. So if you have something to say, talk to me.
But it needs to be enforced, though.
Mr. Moderator, Scott Rose, 57 Range Road. I'm not advocating for or against this, but I wanted to state a couple of things. One, the role of the Select Board by statute 41:8, the Select Board manages the prudential affairs of the town. And with that carries many responsibilities that, that are very important. Goffstown, I believe, is number 10 or 11 in terms of size of all cities and towns in the state of New Hampshire. There are communities that have fewer population than Goffstown that have a mayor and have a town council, et cetera. I'm suggesting whether you're for or against, think about this. The Select Board acts in a similar manner to, say, a mayor of Manchester, a mayor of Nashua, a mayor of Portsmouth. All of them get a salary to run the affairs of those respective cities. So I leave it at that for people, to consider. And finally, I do believe that there is a cost. People, you have a certain responsibility. Many, many years ago, I had suggested that this community consider a town manager form of government. And under a town manager form of government, the select board has a reduced role. They then act at really more policy, and they manage the town manager. It's a much reduced role. And if we're going to eliminate stipends, which again, you can be for or against, then I really think that this community needs to reconsider, should we go to a town manager form of government? Thank you.
Yeah.
Sylvia Springer, 53 Shirley Park Road. What I have to say is not about what I don't value your time that you put in to take care of this town and all the hours that it takes. But you did it, and my understanding was there was not ever going to be a stipend, or you didn't know there was going to be a stipend. You chose to do one when voters didn't want you to. That really stabs me in the heart. I don't like it, but that's neither here nor there. I would say no to this. I would say, good Lord, no to this. We have state representatives that are in this room that all of you, a lot of you know, put in hours and hours and hours for how much a month? No, it's a year, isn't it? $100 a year? Okay. Please, please do not think that I'm devaluing your time, your effort, your wisdom, your knowledge, everything in the hours that you put in. But the answer is no. If you want to pay our state representatives more, I don't know, but I really like what the gentleman before me said. That's a much better setup, and I think maybe the town is ready for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Judy Johnson. I live at 117 Page Hill Road. Here's my card.
Thank you.
First of all, and on my behalf, if you would thank the Select Board for every hour that they have put into this town over the past year, I am grateful. What many people may not know is not only do they participate in their Select Board meetings, but every single Select Board member, the 5 of them, are also on other boards. So for instance, Richard, if you don't mind if I use you as an example, Richard is part of his Select Board. He's part of special committees on his Select Board that he also goes to meetings for. He's on the library committee, so he comes to all our trustee meetings, and he's also on the school department as a representative from the school board. So he goes to all the, from the Select Board, so he goes all to the school board meetings. These people spend hours and hours and hours of their time managing 18,000+ people in our town, and they deserve to get paid. How else can we recognize them? Give them a plaque? No. They deserve to get paid. I am fully in support of them getting a stipend. If we don't, I believe we're going to lose experienced leadership in our town, and we're going to get people that are not qualified, that can't do the job, and we're going to suffer in the end. So I support a stipend. Please support the stipend. I vote yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm John Porter, 46 South Mass Street. Here's my little green card.
Thank you.
And I want to address this issue. I think the Select Board does a wonderful job. And I think we're grateful for all the work they do. And there's only 5 of them who are asking for this stipend. But that's not really true. It's not these 5 that are asking for a stipend. It's the next 5. And who runs for Select Board? Now, people who can arrange their lives, arrange their incomes in such a way that they can spend the time necessary to be on the Select Board. It's a narrow collection of people. There's people out there who might do a great job on the Select Board, and that $400 might make the difference between them deciding, yeah, I can devote that time, or no, I can't devote that time. So I guess what I'm saying is, people who volunteer their time fall into a small group. I ask all of you sitting here, how much time could you take away from your productive employment and spend it on town or state affairs? Just think about that, and think about how a small amount of money might make a difference, and we might get other people, maybe a different kind of person, to be a select person. Thanks.
Elizabeth DeBrule, 9 First Avenue. So, as you guys know, I'm on the Budget Committee. It's kind of like the Budget Committee family reunion here. I did want to point out when this was a controversial matter on the Budget Committee as well, but early in this current budget season, when we knew this was going to come up again because the Select Board the line had been zeroed out and they were still collecting their stipends, I had asked then I'd said this was a great opportunity to reevaluate this whole issue. Because why do sewer commissioners get a stipend, but planning board members don't? And it just seemed to me like these were systems, these stipends were something that had kind of grown up higgledy-piggled over time. Some groups got them, some boards didn't. And that this was an opportunity to look at the whole system and to come up with a plan. Were we going to keep them? Were we going to grandfather them out? What is the criteria for elected officials to receive stipends? I never got an answer on that. Nobody ever got back to us about it. There was never any rhyme or reason about it. And I think that it was a great opportunity lost. And in the course of all this, I think really the bigger issue, whether you vote for this or not, is that we are well past the time when we need a town manager form of government. And not just for the stipends, but for so many other things that we see throughout our town, including the budget negotiations. We would be much better off with a town manager form of government, and I hope that there's an effort to, hopefully led by one of you, to start a commission and study this issue very seriously, because I think we will benefit from it.
Yes, sir.
My name's Eric Emmerling. I live at 33 Moset Ave. And my door, and they say, they want me to buy some Girl Scout cookies. And I said, well, I really appreciate all the work the organization does, but no, I'm not going to pay for it. You know, and Goffstown is a huge, people that run the selectmen, they're like the mayor, they're like the governor or whatever. I mean, they're responsible for what goes on in here. And for us as a town to say, I don't value what they do enough to pay them a little stipend. I think that's foolish. I think it's very selfish. And I, for one, went to several of the selectmen last year after after last year's fiasco, and said you should put it back on the budget, because I think some people in town would be proud to say, yeah, I'm going to help support the selectmen that do all the work here, that have a legal responsibility to do what needs to be done. It's not like me, I volunteer to be on the Parks and Rec Commission, and I put my time in there, but it's not a responsibility. It's not like a legal requirement. It's not a statutory thing. And for us to say, yeah, go ahead, spend 20 hours a week working on helping our town be good, I'm not going to vote to give you any money, and all I need to do is show up once a year and just complain and vote. No, I just think it's wrong. I think there's a lot of other things, maybe you can cut money out, but this is just embarrassing. Thank you.
Move the question.
Who made that?
I make a motion to move the question.
All right.
Second.
A motion made to move the question, which would end the debate. That motion's been seconded. If you are in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The motion passes. Sorry. I mean, I don't think it was in doubt. Is somebody going to move to restrict?
I'll move to restrict reconsideration of Article 16. Second.
All right, there's a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 16. Been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, we'll move on to 17. That motion passed. Article 17 is an article seeking to modify the tax credit for service-connected total disability. I recognize Selectman Craig.
I move Article 17 to the floor.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, sorry.
Okay.
The explanation for Article 17 is on page 14 of the handout. The Select Board proposed this article in response to a change made by the state impacting the state credit for service-connected total disability for eligible veterans enacted by the state in 2025. Prior to passage of House Bill 99, a veteran who qualified for the Veterans Tax Credit for service-connected disability, which was $2,400, was also eligible to receive the Veterans Credit of $600. They could get both for a total credit of $3,000. They could stack the two credits. Under the amended law, veterans that qualify for the tax credit for service-connected total disability are no longer allowed to claim the veterans tax credit anymore. If nothing is done, veterans that qualify for the tax credit for service-connected total disability would see a $600 reduction in their credit. In 2025, there were 79 tax credits for service-connected total disability. This article is recommended by the Select Board. In other words, people with, veterans with disability used to be able to get those two credits, one for $600, one for $2,400, equaling $3,000. The state did away with the $600 credit so that they can't take both anymore. So the proposal is to raise the remaining credit to $3,000 so that even though they can't get both credits, they can still get the $3,000 that they're getting now. That's it.
All right, now,
I'm sorry.
they can still get the $600 credit, but they can't get both.
Yeah, they can't get both.
They can't get both. They can't stack it anymore. Okay, I'll open it up for discussion. Anyone wish to be heard? Yes.
Shannon Carey, 16 Gorham Pond Road. So I just want to make sure I understand this. Basically, between the state and what the town is offering, they used to be able to get $3,000, but based on whatever happened at the state, they would only be able to get $2,400 from the town. So you're asking for the taxpayers to make up the $600 difference. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. Do we have any insight into, I mean, I support veterans, so I'm sorry, I hate my tax bill, but I'll pay this. But do we have any insight into possibly why the tax credit's going away, the $600 credit?
This, just for clarification.
Why they're not letting them stack it anymore?
So for clarification, the $600 credit is still available to veterans that qualify. It's just. So those that qualified for the service connected could no longer claim the veteran as well. They had to pick one.
Do we have any idea as to why they're saying why they can't? That's what I'm.
That's how the law was rewritten in Concord, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome, thanks.
Does anyone else wish to be heard?
I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 17.
Seconded.
All right, motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 17 is on the floor and it's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We'll go to 18. This is a citizen-submitted petition article seeking to raise the elderly income limit to qualify for an elderly exemption. There was a change to the laws that governed town meeting last year. The primary petitioner is given an opportunity to present the petition article at the deliberative session. I invite Fred Platt forward to move the article to the floor and present the article. You're already here.
I'm sneaky, aren't I? I am Fred Platt. I'm from 29 My Way in Goffstown. I move this article to the floor for discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? It's open, okay. I gave my address, 29 My Way. That's in Medville Cooperative. If you don't know where Medville Cooperative, it's behind the Y in the back road. There's 301 homes in there, 500 souls, and of various income levels. Some are hurting. And I was asked to write this article from one of the ladies who are hurting, and I heard from another gentleman. This is would help too. It's not helping me. I just wrote the article, the petition to address their concerns. Before I wrote this, I went to Scott Bartlett, the town assessor, and found that he had last changed it in 2023, not that long ago. And normally he changes it on his own motion by coming with an article like this every time there's an assessment. So this is sort of mid-cycle for that. And but it's been, let's say, the last few years, we've seen what's happened to the dollar. We've seen inflation, and it's big. And so I calculated from March of 23 to March of 26, we're not quite here, but roughly in that period of time, it's been about 10% inflation. So I put the 10% into the income limit, so 42,005 rounded becomes 47,000, and 60,000 for a couple becomes 66,000. That would make a huge difference to some people. I'm also concerned if somebody pays the taxes, the bigger the elderly exemption, the more younger people have to pay. There's a balance there. And, so I maintain that balance by only going up with the rate of inflation. Hopefully people will see the wisdom in helping our elderly citizens who need it. Thank you.
On January 20th, we set aside time to review petition warrant articles, and at that meeting, we voted to recommend this article.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this?
Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street. I was just curious about the inflation into 2026 is about 10%. I mean, checking the consumer price index from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they don't have it at 10%. And so I'm just, I mean, 10% is high. Like,
That 10% is cumulative over three years.
okay.
And so it's not a number in any one year, but it was much higher than that through part of that period of time. Remember, I did this back in October, and my analysis at the time, I did look up inflation rates, and for a 3-year period, it's about 10%. For the 3 years.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Richard Ball. I live at 78 Donald Drive, also in Medville. And I speak to this issue because I want you to realize that there's been a tremendous change in valuations in the houses that we live in. And to give you an example, not that I am not able to feed myself or take care of my wife or anything like that, but when I moved here, which was in October of 2014, I bought a house in Medville. And the next year, the valuation of the house went up because I fixed it up. It was pretty rough shape, but it was $1,700. That was the taxes that year for the year 2015. Since then, it's gone up every year. And this past year, the valuation was around $3,700. So it went up $2,000 in a period of 10 years. I basically live like a lot of people do on a fixed income. If I review what Uncle Sam has done for my family, when I came here, my Social Security, which is a major part of our living, not that we don't have some other funds, was like on the order of $40,000. Now, it's more like $50,000. So over the year, they've small increases. Now, if that's all I had, that means that I would have went from $40,000 to $50,000, which is a 25% increase. But I saw an increase in my taxes that went from $1,700 to $3,700, which is a significantly bigger number. And I do give you this information for your consideration to understand some of the other people. My wife and I are very fortunate that we get that much money for Social Security. It's just for a point of information. Thank you.
Yes.
Leonard Stewart, Riverledge Drive, another one from Medville. I will only point out for the benefit of the rest of the room, that the elderly exemption we're talking about here benefits not only the old folks in Medville, but every senior citizen who income qualifies in town, which I think might help some of those who complain about the problems of being forced out of their home by the skyrocketing taxes due to the increasing valuations in town. I think this is something that goes to the benefit of all of the seniors in town. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Fred, do you want to put in a motion to restrict reconsideration?
I move to restrict reconsideration.
Second.
I move to restrict reconsideration.
Second. Is it seconded? Seconded. All right, there's a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 18. It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Now we'll go to 19. This is Article 19 is a citizen-submitted petitioned article seeking to limit fund balance. I invite Shannon Carey forward to move the article to the floor and present the article.
I make a motion to move Article 19 to the floor.
Second.
Okay, so I don't need my slides quite yet, Derek.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak. As I stated when I presented this article to the select board, my goal is not to criticize staff or the board, but to explain why this article exists and to clarify key distinctions that are often misunderstood when we talk about fund balance. I believe it's important to start with definitions and with timing, because when we measure when we measure matters as much as what we measure. So there's a difference between law and policy. The fund balance policy is not governed by a specific RSA. We talk about RSAs a lot when we discuss this stuff. It's actually falls under the Department of Revenue Administration rules. I'm not aware of what the ultimate legal opinion outcome was from the town. I know they received guidance from the New Hampshire Municipal Association that this was about it being legally binding or advisory. So whether this article is binding or advisory, at the very minimum, it offers voter guidance and policy direction. Even if the vote is advisory, it does not mean it is meaningless. When voters speak clearly, that direction carries real weight for future decisions. So, encumbered funds versus unassigned funds, plain English. There is a legal distinction between encumbered funds and assigned or unassigned fund balance, and that distinction matters. Encumbered funds are legal obligations such as contracts, purchases, payroll, debt service. Under RSA 32, those funds are legally restricted. They are legally restricted and cannot be used for anything else. So we need to think of it in this way. If the town signs a contract to build a garage or replace a roof, that money becomes encumbered. It is legally committed and untouchable. If the town says, we'd like a garage someday with no signed contract, that money is assigned or unassigned. It is not legally locked. This article explicitly excludes encumbered funds. Some of the things I've been asked about is why my numbers differ from the town's, and I just want to, before we even get to the numbers, explain that. The town uses a number taken after warrant articles pass and after voters have already decided what to do with the money. That's retrospective snapshot. I'm using the year-end snapshot before those decisions because we're making the decisions now. Both numbers come from official accounting records and both are accurate. They simply reflect different moments in time. My time frame is proactive and better suited for planning ahead rather than reacting after the fact. So if we want to go to slide 1. Okay. So the source of the unassigned fund balance. Approximately 88% of Goffstown general fund revenue comes from property taxes. The remaining roughly 12% comes from state aid, grants, fees, licenses, and reimbursements. Much of it is restricted, one-time, or offsetting revenue. Even accounting for that 12%, the overwhelming driver of fund balance growth is still property tax over collection. That is why it is accurate to say that fund balance is largely accumulated of taxpayer money. You want to go to the next one? Okay. So I've had some pushback on this, but the pattern, the slide 2 is basically the pattern over time. And the second table, it compares actual unassigned fund balance to a conservative 10% benchmark year by year. So I'd like to state the $28 million figure that you see on the far right on the bottom. I am not saying that represents a single pile of cash sitting in the bank. It represents, if you could look at it as a story of choices, a cumulative policy effective decisions. Had the town consistently targeted 10%, different choices could have been made about tax offset. This is the trajectory, it's not hidden money. So the final example that I couldn't put on this because I already submitted it like a week ago to Derek. The example I could give you and what it would mean for you today is based on what the town currently has before any warrant articles pass, I believe is around it's either 9.6 or 9.2. I've seen two numbers. Anyway, if none of the warrant articles passed, that would leave $850,000 available for tax offset. That works out to be about $130 per the median home value of the $416,000 that the town uses. If my 10% cap had been in place, which is the third column, it says 10% benchmark. If you looked at what we have this year, everything listed, that would actually leave about $3.15 million on the table that could go back to offset taxes. That works out to be about $470,000 off the median home price. So the third slide. This is the comparison with other towns, including Bedford, which I've had some questions about. So many New Hampshire towns operate successfully with unassigned fund balance targets between 5 and 10%. Goffstown's current 16% target is higher than common practice. I've heard from some that towns like Bedford can hold a smaller unassigned fund balance because they use capital reserve funds. This actually really supports my article rather than weakens it. So, unassigned fund balance was never designed to function as a shadow budget or a backdoor funding stream for items that failed in the regular budget. The purpose of unassigned fund balance, according to DRA guidance and generally accepted public finance practice, is to serve as a financial cushion, protection against emergencies, revenue shortfalls, and unexpected costs. When a town routinely relies on excess unassigned fund balance every year to fund special warrant articles for items that did not make it into the operating budget, that turns a stability tool into a spending tool. That's not what unassigned fund balance was intended for. If the town believes certain capital or one-time projects are truly necessary, the more transparent and responsible approach is to either, one, include them in the regular budget process, or fund them through the properly structured capital reserve fund, which is designed specifically for that purpose. Using unassigned fund balance year after year for this function blurs the line between budgeting and saving and shifts risk onto taxpayers rather than planning responsibly in advance. One of the other things I've heard from a lot of people, I understand concerns about state funding, but the state does not set our local policy and it will not solve our immediate tax burden. We can advocate at the state level and still take responsibility for our own town budget today. This article is practical. It's a practical local step within our control right now. So in closing, I just want to say, this article does not spend any money. It does not cut services, and it does not touch encumbered funds. It simply sets voter-approved guardrails around policy-level fund balance decision and ensures taxpayers are part of the conversation when excess funds accumulate.
Commissioner Rivas?
Yes. Okay. Reminds me of a debate club. Okay. So, a couple things. Page 15 has the article. If you need to look at that to understand what the article is directly, so it's there in your handout. I'll also be citing a few numbers as I go through. Please understand that these are coming from like 2025 tax rate forms from various different towns, our town, and annual reports. It's also coming from their own fund balance reports as well as community policies that sit in the towns as I get to them. So we'll talk them through as we go through, okay? So the select board did review the petition on this article on January 20th in our meeting, like we did with many other of the articles. The legislative and to those from those here and here, as well as those watching from home, I'd like to first provide some information related to this article that needs some additional context before any discussion or votes are made. The primary petitioner did point out that the combined assigned and unassigned fund balance of $8.6 million was actually taken from the 2023 MS 535. The town and the state does not include assigned and fund balance in the calculation of the fund balance retention. Assigned fund balance is the portion of the fund balance designated for unperformed contracts or encumbrances. These are expenses that the town has a legal obligation to pay. They are not available for emergencies and cannot be relied upon in the management of cash flow. A more accurate number for this discussion on the fund balance retained at the tax rate setting for October 25 is $8,902,550, which is 13.79%. This percentage is determined by taking the unassigned fund balance and dividing it by the total operational budget that is appropriated by you, the voters, that includes not only the town affairs like DPW, fire department, police department, recreation department, and library, rather it also includes the taxes that are collected for the school and the county budgets as well. So that's something that needs to be accounted for when you think about the unassigned fund balance, because that unassigned fund balance should we have an issue where we can't pay our bills, that accounts for not only the town operations, but it also accounts for the school as well when you're thinking about that unassigned fund balance. The primary petitioner also indicates that 88% of the general fund comes from property taxes. This, however, is not accurate. It's approximately 25% of the general fund comes from motor vehicle registrations, town fees, and revenues from the state of New Hampshire. So, and there is a calculation for that. Happy to spit it out if you want, but it is far taxes than what was indicated. The primary petitioner, as stated, referenced several other towns to Goffstown. Their targets upon inspection were different than what we were shown in the presentation. And there are two towns that are actually close to us in size, Hooksett and Bedford. And it's important to understand those towns because they have operations that are very similar to ours as well. And I'll explain more of that in a second. But when those two are close representations within 10%. So in all cases, the town fund policy is determined by their governing bodies. So every single town that was up there is determined by their governing bodies. The information provided did not include CRFs, and that's something important. We'll talk about it in a moment. Those are utilized to save money for things like fire trucks and capital expenditures. See, I told you we'd get back to that tonight. They are just as important to understand as the assigned fund balance. Okay, so if anybody's taken the time, there is a fund balance policy here for Goffstown. And with this in mind, let's discuss that fund balance policy. The Select Board developed that to ensure prudential affairs of the town are managed in accordance with the recommendations of the Government Finance Officers Associations, GFOA, and the guidance of the Department of Revenue Administration, the DRA. One is a nonprofit that basically looks at multiple different government bodies, be it state or federal, and then they advocate best practices. The DRA also provides guidelines. The Department of Revenue Administration provides a reference range fund for fund balance retention, which is between 5 and 17% of the general fund operating expenses. The town fund balance policy retention complies with the guideline. So our current policy put in place by the governing body complies with the DRA. There is an explanation of the fund balance on pages 18 and 19. If you haven't looked at them tonight, they're in the handout. You should have received. It's also available on the town website, should you need to look it up as well. In returning to the unassigned fund balance of the other towns, what their governing bodies of each town is in charge in determining adequate levels of that unassigned fund balance, considering each government's unique set of circumstances. Remember, I said the size of the towns are also important. So let's look at the two comparable communities, Bedford and New Hampshire. Their fund balance policy recommends a range between 8 and 17%. Which is within the DRA recommendation. The governing body recommends funds moving to the CRF to offset tax relief. As of 2025 tax rate, Bedford retained $15.3 million, so that's 12.24%, far higher than the 10% that was shown. Bedford currently has 72 capital reserve funds, accounting for $9,742,346 and that was as of 12/31/24. In taxpayer money that's used for planning purposes, such as ensuring stability of the town, things like fire trucks or other apparatus that they need. And the other thing to also take into account is that Bedford has very similar sizes in schools as us, offered with, collectively a higher tax rate for each household there as well. If we look at Hooksett, the fund balance policy minimum is actually 5% with a target of 8%. Though the town administrator code adopted by town council also allows the governing body to stay between the DRA recommendation, which is between 5 and 17%. The 2025 tax rate retained $5.3 million for them, which was actually 8.37 in Hooksett. So they have 19 capital reserve funds worth $3 million, or $3,900,433 as of 6/30/25. What makes Hooksett a little bit different is Hooksett only has 3 schools, and their high school students actually go to another town. That means that they don't have to keep up with the infrastructure of the town or actually account for that as part of their unassigned fund balance. So as part of the fiduciary duties, the Select Board considers the financial standing of the town and the fund balance retention at tax rate setting every year. Thank you. Let me grab all my notes here. Well, I guess one other thing is there is no backdoor funding on the unassigned fund balance because all of you, the voters, vote on it every year.
Does anyone in the audience wish to be heard at this time?
Samantha Kearns, 5 Washington Street. I had a question about the wording. No vote of the select board or any local policy or administrative action may supersede or nullify this limitation. That wording feels very different than like any other warrant article I've read. And is that kosher to be in there like that? And then my second question.
Let's get an answer to the first one.
Oh,
first.
okay. I didn't want to monopolize the microphone.
Trying to find my papers here.
So yes, the wording is very unique. And having been given legal guidance, the select board believes that this is an advisory article based upon that wording.
Okay. And then my second question, I guess, is kind of more directly to Ms. Carey. How would you feel about 13 versus 10?
That's where we are right now, so that's not reducing in any way, form, or shape. It's keeping it right where we are right now. The only upside to any of that would be if the select board actually follows through with using the excess funds to offset the tax rate, as they stated in 2022 and in the years since, that they're looking to get away from utilizing any excess funds to offset taxes the following year.
Okay.
To me, above anything else, that's the biggest thing. This money is not coming back to the taxpayer.
Right.
In any way, form, or shape in that sense, and it needs to be.
Right. And I guess my thought is like this, the policy, could you switch to the policy slide for me, Derek? Would you mind? I want to make, oh, no, that one. So we have a policy minimum of 6 and then or I guess the target is 16, right?
Yes, minimum of 12% and a target of 16% is the current policy, and the board regularly reviews this policy.
Okay. And I guess where I came from with 13 is that we would move from 6 to 13, and then if 13 is cool, we could move from 13 to 10, as opposed from moving from 16 to 10 and then having to maybe move back up. That's where I'm like coming out with this number
I
from.
totally hear you. And Derek this whole process, he's been awesome. I mean, he obviously doesn't work for me, he works for the town, but when I've asked questions, he's provided a lot of information. I don't know if he has the slide handy, because it's not my slide, it's their information. If you look at the 20-year history of the unassigned fund balance, up until 2022, we didn't operate in this range. There were actually quite a few years we were under 10%. In my personal digging, I cannot find a single instance in the past 20 years when the town of Goffstown had to utilize unassigned fund balance in the emergency setting way, which would require full board approval as well as approval from the Department of Revenue Administration. I have not, someone can correct me, but I cannot find anywhere in 20 years where that's where we've needed it.
Yeah.
So 10% covers what they need to cover.
Thank you.
Elizabeth DeBrule, 9 First Avenue. So my question is, isn't there another way to solve this? Because frankly, this is too complicated of an issue, and it's too important of an issue, and it's, in my opinion, too much for the voters to sort of get dumped with this dueling narrative, and we got to try and sort through it. I've already seen a bunch of stuff on Facebook with incorrect numbers. Isn't there something else we could do besides this sort of model? I mean, I think Shannon's raised some good points. And not only that, this has become a hot button issue. There are obviously concerns or misunderstandings or both about the unreserved fund balance. Wouldn't we be better served to form some kind of commission that has representatives from different groups of people to actually look at this and make a considered judgment? Because I don't think this is ready for the voters. I think there has to be more work put into this. and a clearer path found. Because the other thing that isn't really mentioned is one of the main uses of unreserved fund balance is managing cash flow. We've done all this work to get our employees up to the 50th percentile. We don't want to be in a position where it comes time to pay their weekly salary and we don't have the money to do it. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board on this, and we need to sit down and address these concerns, which are clearly strong and very possibly legitimate, and find out, kind of get to the bottom of it before we vote on something where we really don't have a very good understanding of what this is all about.
Brian Mazer, 39 Shirley Park Road. I guess when there was a presentation on the demographics of Bedford and Hooksett, the metric I didn't see, or data I didn't see, is the commercial base, where there's a high percentage of tax revenue coming from those towns. So I wanted to see if you guys considered that, because Bedford definitely has 3 times the amount of our commercial base, and Hooksett is probably more than us. So I'm curious about the data on that point.
You are correct that Bedford has more commercial base than us. Though even with that into account, their housing prices are actually valued higher for them, and they still pay more in taxes per average on household than we do.
He's deferring to you.
You were next. That's how it works.
Melanie Renfrew Hebert, 23 College Road, Goffstown. I like the idea of community-driven petitions, and I appreciate that you put the petition out. I'm concerned because I have some familiarity from being on the Budget Committee and a few other committees with the amount of work that goes into figuring out what these amounts should be. So I would have a question, Mr. Moderator, if I may. Can I ask if anybody up front can explain to us a little bit about how they came to determine this amount for the rates? What am I asking? I'm sorry. Can you explain how we got within that range?
Are you asking about the policy, how we got to that?
I'm asking about how the town
Arrived at that policy
arrived at
decision?
that policy.
So the policy was derived by looking at the best practices between the GFOA and the DRA mentioned. GFOA recommends that you have 2 months of reserves. The DRA says between 5 and 17%. So the range was created between 12 and 14, or 12 and 16. 16 basically being 2 months. So if you take the entire year divided by 12, you get roughly 16%. So that's where the top range came from. The lower range was to basically stay within the DRA standard.
Thank you. And if I may ask, I'm sorry, if I have a statement. As a almost 14-year resident in Goffstown, raising my kids, my family here, I'm very concerned when I hear inflammatory rhetoric, like a dog whistle, to incite people about the impacts. I think clearer language about just exactly what this article would do would have been better. I think at least half of the people in the room probably got a little upset over the wording being used by the petitioner. Thank you. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yeah.
I think it was shadow budgeting, which implies that our community, the people who are the people who are responsible for, I apologize, I get distracted by someone else talking here, but the phrase that was used by the petitioner was shadow budgeting.
She's accusing somebody of accusing other people, and it needs
to move on. We need to move on as a point of order. It's inappropriate.
Deep state and something, doing something for their own benefit.
And I'll just yield if that's not appropriate at this time, but, okay, thank you.
Hey, Bob Wayne, Gritty Hill Road. I like what Shannon was saying. I think anything we can do to help, well, let me just go back. So I've been here since the 90s, and over the last 10 years, I've noticed that a lot of family lands that should have been generational lands have been developed into developments and, taking away all our woods everywhere because nobody can afford the taxes to keep those lands in the family that are very sacred to the families is a very key part in figuring out how to do that for the whole entire town. And I know a lot of people probably live in Bernardville or whatever, and they don't have that type of lands, but there's a huge part of Goffstown that has this. And we got a lot of people voting away these people's lands, and they're not too happy, and maybe they don't show up to meetings as they should. We would call them maybe woods people a little bit, but.
Point of order. We speak into the motion.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to get to a point here where Shannon bringing up all this stuff where we can save some money is a big deal, and we should think about that all around with everything. And what that maroon shirt lady said, it should be a little bit restructured maybe and looked at with a couple people. So, thank you.
Okay.
Here's my card. Jessica Putin, Lesnick Road. I have a lot of notes, I'm not going to read them all. So my understanding, unassigned fund balance should be based on the town's risk, not just a number that you guys think is good. I know there's a recommendation from the DRA and the other group there, but when I look at our town budget and our revenues, Goffstown recognizes revenue on our property taxes when they're billed, not when they're received. So, and most of them are mortgage escrow, so they're paid on time. That makes our revenue predictable, stable, and low risk. It doesn't justify a higher percentage. So I have a question for you guys. If the property taxes are billed in Goffstown, counted as revenue when they're billed, what percentage is paid on time, either through mortgage escrow or direct payments?
Derek's going to make sure that I'm accurate here on this one. So it's not recognized when it's billed, according to our auditors.
I looked through all your financial audits. It's accrual accounting.
It's deferred revenue.
It's under deferred revenue.
Deferred revenue.
Yeah, deferred revenue. And we have roughly at the end of every year, we have about 1.3 million that has not been collected still.
And what have you collected? What's the amount?
The total amount, I just have what was outstanding as of December 31st, and that was $1,295,313. What was our commitment?
Local tax effort.
No, it's on the commitment page.
Here we go. 56.8 million.
56.8 million was the commitment.
So we collected 55 million,
Yes,
and only 1 million is late.
yes.
Okay, so unassigned fund balance in the emergency sense is to cover what has not been collected.
No.
Well, you're saying to pay your bills, that you're not getting money on time to pay bills. But if we got 55 million on time,
So we're a little bit different than the school. The school passes their budget at March town meeting. Their year doesn't start till July 1st. Right now, we are a month and a half into our budget, and we won't get our tax bills until June and July. So it's really those May, June, those times, and also then December, or November and December before the tax bills come in. And also, that 1.3 million, a portion of that is due to the school and the county. We have to pay that out to the school and the county, whether we've collected it or not. And so that is one of the considerations.
so do you consider us high risk?
I don't know that we've ever done a risk assessment, to be honest with you.
Okay. I just have one more thing to say before I leave. Currently, no policy is requiring excess return to taxpayers. This article changes that. Just want to remind everyone. With families stretched thin and nervous about the increasing taxes, I think it's important to give taxpayers any break that we can, and if we can do that with this, I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Shannon, for all the work you've done on this.
Jack, you got your voter card with you?
Yeah. Jack Carbonell, 35 Shirley Park, Goffstown, New Hampshire. There is a limit that if there was an unassigned fund balance over a certain percentage, it would be returned to the taxpayer. So that last statement was not true. The unassigned fund balance is held in an interest-bearing account, and it makes money, right? Some amount of money every year. We've collected the unassigned fund balance over many years and got it to this point. So it's always been making money. So if we reduce it to 10% and we save this $470 of the median house, we do that for how long? This year.
That's the number for this year. Next year.
That's the number for this year. This year, you don't know what our unassigned balance will be for next year. It could be under that 10% already. So then there would be no other tax savings. And then if we needed to spend more than that, then the taxes would fluctuate even more. Am I missing something? Thank you. No, I'm not.
So to answer the question, if we were to reduce down from 13% to 10%, it would be a one-time savings against the current tax year that we assess in September. Okay. The other thing to note is that based upon the amount of money that's currently in that interest-bearing account, we do make money on that, and that offsets the taxes already. So this past year, we offset the taxes by almost $500,000 just by that interest-bearing account. So that did help your taxes out already, and it's something to take into account. So if we reduce that and you get a major savings on that, the following year, if we don't have any underspend or basically there's no interest that comes up to that level, you won't have that offset either. So that is something to account for when you're thinking about this article.
Can I just need to make a point of clarification?
Okay.
Yep. So I just want to make a couple quick clarifications after the select board had made their presentation. I'd like to state that I did not say that Bedford keeps 10%. When I wrote this article in September, that's how long ago I sat down to write the legal jargon, based on their areas, the towns around us, I went based on their policy. I did not call each and every town and ask them what their number was at. I looked up on their town's website, what is their policy? So the numbers that I stated that were up on the screen, that's based on their listed policies. And second, I want to make sure, because this came up when I was speaking to the select board, so I want to make sure I either was not understanding it then, or apparently not understanding it now. You're saying my 12% number is incorrect, because that includes licenses and fees, and that's actually 25%. If I'm understanding correctly, that 25% is actually 25% of the 12% I'm referencing, am I correct? Because that's what you stated at the select board meeting. When that came up, we talked about states the licensing and fees, and you talked about it being 25%. You stated that was actually part of the 12% wedge, because my 12% does include, based on the town's MS 535, which is the form you report to the state, all of those fees in that 12%.
So the MS 535 includes the sewer enterprise fund, so that's probably not the best place to look at. I would point voters at this meeting to page 5.
Is that's what you report to the state though, correct? The MS 535 is what gets reported to the state.
Hold on, just a minute.
So I would point people to page 5, Article 9, the operating budget. It is what the Budget Committee has proposed is a budget of $27.5 million with an offsetting revenue of $7,362,236. That is closer to 25% than it is 12%. Again, the MS 35 is the year-end report that's submitted to the state, and that includes sewer enterprise fund. It includes our tax collection. It also, if you look at one before the ambulance special revenue fund was converted to a revolving fund, it would have included the EMS fund in there as well. And it also, it looks at your total operating revenue. So I think that a better place to look at is, again, for percentage of the general fund budget is Article 9.
Jessica. I already said my name.
Yeah. I'm going to entertain that motion. There's been a motion to move the previous question, which would end debate. It's been seconded. It's not a debatable motion. All in favor of ending the debate, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. All right, we're done. Now.
No.
Let's see.
Shannon, do you want to restrict?
I need to make a motion to restrict reconsideration?
Did you make a?
I just made the motion, yeah.
And it's been seconded. All right, there's been a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article, what is it, Article 18? 19. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Okay, it passes. We'll go to number 20. All right, let's see.
Just be careful when you walk around. Okay. We need, go talk to, let's go talk to her. She wants to make them.
Okay. Article 20 is a citizen-submitted petition article seeking to restrict commercialization and retail sales of non-regulated intoxicating substances. I invite Patricia Brannan forward to move the article to the floor and to address it.
I'd like to move Article 20 to the floor.
Seconded.
Been seconded.
Okay.
You can.
Yeah. 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 Good evening. My name is Tricia Brannan, and I live at 39 Peppermint Street. I am the petitioner of record for this article. As parents and residents in Goffstown, we have been increasingly concerned about the availability of several concerning intoxicating but unregulated products in our community. Substances like galaxy gas, nitrous oxide, sold as a culinary product but used recreationally as an inhalant, hallucinogenic mushrooms sold as shroomies candy, and kratom, a plant product with opioid-like effects sold in convenience stores and vape shops. At the last Selectmen's meeting, we listened closely to the concerns expressed by the Select Board and the Police Chief, as well as to others who have found beneficial medicinal uses for some of these substances. We have also learned that New Hampshire is considering legislative action on these substances. Therefore, as the petitioner of record for Article 20, I would like to propose the following amendment, this text to replace the original in its entirety. Shall the town of Goffstown consider restricting retail sales of non-regulated and intoxicating substances? The governing body shall consider prohibiting to a person under the age of 21 the sale, gifting, delivery, or public display for sale of the following substances, which as intoxicants are unregulated or illegal. Kratom products containing mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine, hallucinogenic plants and fungi, nitrous oxide, and alkyl nitrates. This warrant article will have no tax impact. I also want to make people aware that we have a representative from, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So the petitioner for Article 20, which is on the board behind me, has moved to amend it to what she just read, which I do not believe you have in front of you. So I'm going to read it again because I know she started talking and it was a little hard to follow. Her amendment proposes, and she has moved this, so it will need a second, is that shall the town of Goffstown consider restricting retail sales of non-regulated and intoxicating substances. The governing body will consider prohibiting to a person under the age of 21 the sale, gifting, delivery, or public display for sale the following substances, which as intoxicants are unregulated or illegal. Kratom products containing nitroglycine and 7-hydromitro, and that's not my pronunciation, the spelling is correct, hallucinogenic plants and fungi, nitrous oxide, and alkali nitrates. This warrant article will have no tax impact. So that's the amendment, is to restrict the sales, and that is the language. Is there a second to that amendment? I'll second. There's been a second to the amendment. Now the petitioner can speak to the amendment.
I'm a concerned citizen. I care about the young people in our community, and I would like the town to consider restricting these non-regulated intoxicating substances that are available to anybody. I also want to let you know that we have a representative here from Making It Happen, which is our public health network, and they have information regarding the state bills that are being heard up at the State House, and also information about these products that I just mentioned.
Is there anyone who would like to speak to the amendment?
Can I speak?
Can the select board speak?
Selectman Craig, you want to come up to speak to the article as it's been amended at this point?
Yes, the Select Board reviewed the petition article on our January 20th meeting, and I don't think the amendment changes our opinion that while there is some merit to the intent of this article, state and federal law preempt the town from regulating these substances. RSA 318B, the State's Controlled Drug Act, clearly designates the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services as the official responsible for drug scheduling. And as the petitioner noted, yet there is Senate Bill 557 currently working its way through the Concord sausage that prohibits prohibits the sale of Kratom products to under 21-year-olds and regulates the sale of Kratom products. So our feeling is that this should be taken care of at a state level, and that's the proper way to handle this.
Brian Mazer, 39 Shirley Park Road. Yeah, that was one of my questions is do we in fact, if it does be presented to the voters and it does pass, do we actually have the jurisdiction to actually enforce it? And I don't think we do. So that's kind of a question. So, thank you.
Good evening, Leonard Stewart, Riverledge Drive. I just think it's a simple question. How can you regulate these things on a town-by-town basis when people who are looking for it can just get back in the car and drive to a gas station in the next town? The state level seems to me to be the appropriate level for this stuff to be regulated at, and, you know, echoing what Selectman Craig said, I just don't think this is an appropriate level for this kind of regulation. Thank you.
Now, we're discussing this amendment now. Go ahead.
Yep, Nicole Bump, Monarch Ave. And as far as the amendment goes, I think it said that the change would be the select board would consider to do this. We've heard a lot of people say that, oh, well, this could be advisory. It would still talk to the board and to our community about what our voters want. So if that is in fact the case, I think it would be great to still support it. I know Kratom is sold at gas stations. My middle schooler has heard of it. His friends have heard of it. Kids are getting their hands on these things. So I would love to tell our select board, even if it is in an advisory capacity, that we're not okay with this and we would like to regulate it. Thank you.
Fred?
Fred Platt, 29 My Way. I think my point was just taken away from me. The word consider has, that word in there doesn't bind the select board to anything. So yeah, we consider that, that's it. So just the word, I don't think it has any teeth, even the amendment.
All right. Yes? You want to speak on it?
Moving the question.
All right, yeah, all right.
James.
The gentleman has moved the previous question to end debate. Is there a second? All in favor of ending debate on this article, say aye. Aye. On the amendment, Let me say that over again. All in favor of ending the debate on the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, now that passed. Now we're back to the main article, the main motion. No, the motion to...
No, you just limited debate.
Yeah, okay, right. So now we're back to discussing the amendment. On voting, I'm sorry, yes, but now we're going to vote on whether or not we're going to go with the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. No. All right, the amendment has passed. Now we go back to the main, no, we don't go back to the main article.
Do you have another?
Yeah. 21.
Oh, yeah. My work is done.
Are we gonna have a motion to restrict?
You're gonna pass?
Motion to restrict? Seconded? Okay, there's been a motion made from the audience to restrict reconsideration of the vote we just took on the amendment to this article. That motion to restrict reconsideration has been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, it passed, no, opposed. Who's going to oppose it? Okay, so. Okay, now we go to Article 21. This is the last article. Article 21 is a citizen-submitted petition article seeking to restrict retail access to non-regulated and intoxicating cannabis or marijuana-related products. So I invite Patricia Brannan forward to move the article and to present it.
I move Article 21 to the floor.
Seconded.
Thank you. My name is Tricia Brannan, and I live at 39 Peppermint Street, and I am the petitioner of record for this article. As parents and residents in Goffstown, we have become increasingly concerned about the availability of unregulated and intoxicating cannabis products sold legally as hemp products, but containing enough of the psychoactive chemicals, Delta-8 THC, Delta-9 THC, etc., to cause impairment. We have recently learned that at both the state and federal level, there is an effort to require more accurate identification and regulation of these products. With that possibility in mind, I, as a petitioner of record for Article 21, I would propose the following amendment to this article. This text is to replace the original in its entirety. Shall the town of Goffstown consider restricting the sales of any non-regulated and intoxicating cannabis or hemp-based products? The governing body shall consider prohibiting the sale, delivery, or public display for sale of products containing THC, natural or synthetic tetrahydrocannabinol, which appear in any formation, including Delta-8 THC, Delta-9 THC, and any other THC isomer variant to a person under the age of 21. This warrant article will have no tax impact.
The petitioner has moved to amend the warrant article. Is there a second? Second. You can. Does anybody need me to reread the amendment? This is the same process we just went through. Okay.
Again, I am concerned about the young people in our community having access to these substances. These are non-regulated intoxicating substances that are available to anybody.
Anybody wish to be heard on this article? On the amendment of the article.
Richard Freeman, 111 Terrell Hill Road. As a member of the Drug Awareness Program in the Benevolent Protective Order of Elks, I applaud you on what you're trying to do. You're going to restrict sales in Goffstown. That's great. But if you go online, you can buy any of these materials and not prove an ID or prove an age. So these kids aren't safe just in Goffstown. You can go on buynoid.com and get half of what you just read. So we need to go in a broader spectrum of what you want to do here. We can't regulate the mail, we can't, but we can educate. Anybody that's in this audience wants me to come and speak to your children, I'll be more than happy to. I do it on a regular basis throughout the state of New Hampshire. And as an elk, we love the veterans and we try very hard to teach our children about drugs, about not doing drugs. So anybody wants to talk, you can find me on well, I'm on Facebook, but I don't go on Facebook, but you can find me anywhere in town. Any Thursday, any other Thursday night except for planning board meetings, I'm at the Trestle, so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. If this does nothing else, I want to educate people about these substances because, to be honest with you, I didn't know about these substances, and I'm mortified that young people can get their hands on them so easily.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Bob Wayne, I heard, Grady Hill Road, I heard earlier when you were talking about, you said hemp-based products, and, hemp-based products, I don't know if you own any hemp shirts, but those are the best shirts you can own. I can tell you that Betsy Ross's flag was sewn on hemp fabric. The Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper. So when we start doing stuff like that, we take away a lot of our history and a lot of good stuff, because really, George Washington had fields of hemp he was growing, and it could replace our paper industry very easily. So I'm just saying, I'm not for all this crazy stuff. I like the natural grown good stuff. But all this wacky stuff that the kids are getting into, I'm not for that whatsoever. But I just want to clarify hemp.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
That's why you have to stay to the end.
Yep. All set. Leonard Stewart, Riverledge Drive. Same point that I made on the preceding article. It's an enforcement nightmare. It's something that needs to be regulated at the state level, and it's not a problem that Goffstown can solve on its own with regulation, when, as the gentleman just said, you can either get it online or you can drive to the next town or it. So I think this is a bad idea at this point. Thank you.
All right, we ready to vote on the amendment? Anybody want me to read it? No. Okay. All in favor of the amendment to this article, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the amendment passes. Now, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. No, hold it.
No, if you
What?
adjourn, you can't. If we just adjourn, then that doesn't. You don't have to restrict.
We're not doing
If we're adjourned, we're.
You want to do a restriction of?
When the meeting's over, the meeting's over. Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I know, but it hasn't been voted on yet. Okay.
It doesn't.
We'll go back to all in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No! Throw tomatoes at that guy.
Mics are still on. Does